Welcome. You're listening to Claiming Space, a show that holistically questions our pursuits of new frontiers. Centered around the social sciences, in the space industry, Claiming Space features diverse voices and perspectives with a specific focus on digital economies in space ecosystems. We talk to experts from a wide range of sectors in social sciences, technology, and the arts that affect not only our daily lives on Earth, but also beyond, that are parallels to each other. I'm your host, Vikram. Today we have Sarah Blyde. Sarah is a real-life rocket woman based in Auckland, New Zealand. After starting out making cardboard rockets, Sarah now spends her days helping to build the real thing at Rocket Lab. She also volunteers for Rocket Women, which is an international organization working to inspire the next generation of young women to pursue careers in STEM. In addition, Sarah is one of two national points of contact for New Zealand at the Space Generation Advisory Council, a global non-profit organization and network which aims to represent university students and young professionals in the space industry at the United Nations, space agencies, industry, and academia. She is a graduate of the University of Auckland with degrees in engineering and commerce, and at the International Space University with a master's in space studies. After graduating, Sarah worked for a brief time in the energy industry before transitioning into a career in the space industry. In her spare time, you'll likely find her kitesurfing at the beach, training for a marathon, or hiking up at a mountain somewhere. Let's get started. Hey Sarah. Welcome to Claiming Space. It's really good to have you here. How are you today?
Thank you. Yeah, it's good to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Okay, so I'll start like I start every guest that comes on. Let's start with your journey. How did you get to where you are today? What inspired you to get to where you are today?
Sure. So I guess I can start from the beginning. Makes most sense. So I'm a Kiwi. I'm from Auckland, New Zealand. Grew up here and went to school as well as university in Auckland. So I attended the University of Auckland, did a Bachelor of Engineering and Commerce there. And we can get into why I chose that a little later on, but essentially did my studies, graduated in around 2015, and then headed over to Australia where I got a job in the oil and gas industry.
Yeah.
So that was really exciting at the time. It was a really good place to start off my career. But after a few years there, I couldn't help but thinking that maybe it wasn't actually what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. So started thinking about what it was that I did want to do. And there was two things that came to mind. One was, thinking about how we can, help combat climate change in terms of more clean energy solutions. And so I was really interested in that. And then the second thing that I was interested in was space. And that was really the one that got me the most excited out of the two. Yeah. So I figured out how to get there, and the solution that came to mind was going back to university, which, to be honest, I thought I'd never do. I had enough of it the first time around, but for me, that was the best idea, was to go back and do a master's.
Okay.
And I ended up doing that in France at the International Space University, which was a fantastic time there, and basically was over in France when the pandemic hit. So that was a fun time, a bit stressful, but very quickly came home to New Zealand and finished my studies remotely. Yeah. And then once I graduated last September, I was out looking for work and found myself with a job at Rocket Lab. So nice. That's kind of how it all happened.
Cool. How was your experience with your master's at ISU?
Yeah, it was awesome. I loved it. For me, it was actually the perfect course. It's not initially for everyone the way it is. And the reason I say that is it's an interdisciplinary course. So you get to learn a little bit about everything, which for me was perfect because I like to learn a little bit about everything. I'm very curious. And so it meant that I was going into a course with engineers. I was going into a course with lawyers, scientists, people from a business background. And so that was just fascinating, being in such an environment with people from all different countries as well. And so I got to learn about the engineering behind space, but also about the law, about management, about humanities, everything. So for me, that was just a really great stepping stone from to go from the oil and gas industry and then find my way into the space industry.
Yeah, oh, nice. So you are one of the New Zealand national points of contact for the Space Generation Advisory Council, or SGAC. Can you tell us a bit about what the SGAC is and its vision and your role? We'll start with the SGAC and then go to your role.
Sure. Yeah, so SGAC is a fantastic organisation out there. Essentially, they're a network for young professionals and students, an international network actually. And to be honest, I hadn't heard about them too much before I went over to Europe to study. And that's where I found a lot of people who had been involved with SGAC, either as a national point of contact or as part of their project groups. And they spoke very highly of their experiences with SGAC. And so I thought, well, should really figure out a bit more about what this organisation is about, and attended some of their online events at the time. And then the role came up to apply for the role for the national point of contact for New Zealand soon after I returned home. So put my name in the hat and got selected. So essentially, they're a fantastic network. Basically, they're worldwide, so they're in 150 different countries. They have over 15,000 members, and they run all sorts of events all around the world. At the moment, a lot of them are obviously online, but they do have in-person events as well normally. And then they have project groups, which is really important. So, that's a fantastic way to also get involved.
Yeah, cool. So what is your role as the national point of contact for New Zealand? Like, what does it involve?
Good question. Yeah, so there's two of us that are national points of contact for New Zealand. It's Yen Kai and myself. And we're kind of essentially representing SGAC as a network in New Zealand and bringing the opportunities that members of SGAC have to Kiwis here in New Zealand. So we're still, I guess, quite small and relatively unknown in the New Zealand space ecosystem, but we're trying to change that. So we're all about getting the kind of the name of SGAC out there and helping get Kiwis more involved in the space ecosystem worldwide, not just in New Zealand. So there's plenty of opportunities that young Kiwis can get involved with through the network, and maybe what they're already interested in.
Yeah, cool. So the SGAC has a bunch of project groups. Could you tell us a bit more about, could you let us know what these are, and do you have a favorite?
Yeah, so there's quite a few of them. They're all sorts of different topics. So it doesn't matter what your background is. You could get involved with one of these project groups, and you could pick your favorite one. So there's ones that are like commercial space, like near Earth objects. There's space law and policy. There's space exploration. There's medicine. There's all sorts. There's 10 of them. Yeah. My favorite. It's actually a bit weird because I'm an engineer by background, but I think my favorite's actually the Space Law and Policy Group. Okay, I feel like that's where, as young people, we can have a real influence and kind of provide a different perspective. And I think the people that are part of that group are doing some great things. Yeah. So that's probably my favorite one, actually. I quite like that. And I find it very fascinating how we don't have a completely blank space. Blank plate. Blank page, but we can kind of start from pretty new, and so there's a lot of room there to grow in terms of the space law and policy environment. So it's very exciting.
Yeah, there's a lot more groups definitely now, because I remember I think 4 or 5 years ago it was just like maybe 4 or 5 groups. Now there's a lot more.
Okay. Yeah, so it's definitely grown.
Yeah, it's definitely grown. So I noticed you were part of Rocket Women. What are your thoughts on diversity in the space industry?
It's a very open question, I suppose. My general thoughts. So I guess I'll start a little bit about what Rocket Women is. So basically, they're a organisation that I got involved with, an initiative that's all about kind of sharing stories of women in STEM, with a particular focus on the space sector. So it's helping to inspire essentially the next generation of young girls and women to get into STEM careers, which I'm really passionate about because it's something that I didn't have too much growing up. I kind of did find my way into STEM, but it was kind of maybe more by luck than intention. So for me, I find it really important to encourage and inspire other women into these kind of careers, but also to provide that network. So once we are here, it's great to have a network of women around you who are supportive. And so Rocket Women provides that as well, which is really, really cool. And it's a fun organization to be part of. We have people all around the world working on this. So we have a lot of online meetings to plan what we're doing in the next, quarter or the next year, which is heaps of fun. And so I have a role involved with Rocket Women, which is on the communications and marketing side. So I do a lot of the social media kind of stuff. So we have Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and all that. If you want to follow us.
Your thoughts in terms of diversity, when it comes to women in the space industry?
So from me,
different forms.
No, right? Yeah, the space industry is like, to me, any other STEM industry. There's a lot of challenges in terms of diversity still across industries, not particular to the space industry as such. And there's a lot of things I think the space industry actually does better than where I was working prior. But essentially, there's what you probably heard as a STEM pipeline. I think is really important that we get more females into STEM to begin with, but also keep them there. And so that challenges across all kind of STEM industries there. But I think not just women, but diversity in general, obviously goes across many different kind of, I guess, types of people. So we want to not just get more women, but we want to get people with different ethnic backgrounds, different, places that have come from, different specializations, disciplines, and all sorts of diversity that exists out there. So I think space is actually really inclusive in that way. But however, there's ways that we can still improve. So particularly, like for me, I found with trying to get into space was the hardest part. It is inclusive, but it's kind of, there's barriers in place that make it difficult if you're not in the United States or if you're not living in Europe. The access to opportunities there's just not the same amount as if you're coming from New Zealand. It's very difficult. So that's where I think SGAC and organisations like that can really help, providing that insight to where the opportunities are. And sometimes you do have to just go overseas to get that access. And that was a really good thing with International Space University, is that they'll set up to accept people from all different countries and all different backgrounds. So I'm really thankful that they kind of open to everyone in that respect.
Oh, nice. Just to maybe sidetrack a little bit regarding Rocket Women, could you tell us a little bit more in detail, what I guess it sort of involves, the work?
Sure. Yes. So we're mostly like an online platform. We do some in-person things where we're each located, the people on the committee, but it's mostly online. So we have a website, which is essentially where we share all our stories. So we do a lot of interviews with women who are in the industry or in academia, who are just really inspiring individuals, and we just want to hear their story, understand their journey about how they got to where they are today. And we think it's really important to share those stories because there's an awesome quote that we have on our front page of our website by Sarah Blyde, the astronaut, which is that you can't be what you can't see. So we're about really showcasing those stories from inspiring women that are already out there doing their thing. So that's one of our main goals, but we also want to be there just to support women in general in STEM careers. So we're there as kind of a network for all those people out there as well. And we also like to kind of promote and share awesome resources, scholarships and opportunities to our followers as well. So we kind of partner with a lot of other organizations to do that.
Nice. So I realize this might be a repeat, but maybe spin it a little bit different. But so I realize News and Space Agency is young and it's new and doesn't have that kind of maturity that most spacefaring nations have, especially the old ones. So in a way, we kind of have this blank slate or blank check, but more like blank slate than check, to ensure like that we can start ahead. Like it's like we're skipping the analog sort of generation or the desktop generation, going straight to mobile kind of thing, right? So I was wondering, how do you think that things could be done for women in technical areas in general, and more specifically in the space industry, like over here, based on what you've seen, out overseas, because from your experience in France, right? And your previous role in oil and gas, because you said that wasn't as supportive. So what because we have a blank slate, so what could we do from sort of day one? That's a bit better.
Yeah, it's a good question. I suppose you're right. We do have a bit more of a blank slate with the space industry. And I think we can learn a lot about what's been done elsewhere, and what's been successful and maybe what hasn't been successful. Coming back to kind of the STEM pipeline, I guess, for women in STEM, I think, we definitely need to encourage more women to get into it from the beginning. And a lot of that comes down to the educational pathways that we have. So when I was at university, there was really no ability to study like aerospace engineering or any kind of space topics, really, and there wasn't much of an industry. So I never really saw it as a career that existed and that was possible, unless I was like a US citizen and was able to go to the States. So as a result, I didn't really think too seriously about it, which is why I ended up going to kind of down a completely different path to begin with, until realizing that there were actually opportunities to work in space, and it was totally something that I could do. So it's just about providing that visibility, but providing those pathways for people to get to the sector. And I think we're working on that. I think we're kind of doing it in small steps, but it'd be great if we could have, more tertiary education opportunities for people to get into the sector to begin with. So I hope to see that grow. And then there's the bits about, I guess, once you're in the industry, how do we keep women there? And I don't necessarily have all the answers to that, but it's about making the environment, I guess, as female friendly as possible. There's many industries that kind of that struggle to achieve that. Where I was working in Australia in oil and gas, did it quite well, but I don't know if any company does it perfectly. I think it's a very in any industry, to be honest, it's a challenge to make an environment more, I guess, accepting of or like not accepting, but like that's cognizant of the different challenges that women might face in the workforce, and giving the flexibility that they need and things like that. And I think also another thing on that is that we kind of have this mindset of what a good engineer is, coming from like an engineering background. And for quite a while, when I first entered the industry, I thought that I wasn't a very good engineer because I had a like different way of seeing things. So I was more of a big picture engineer versus the typical like analytical, detail orientated engineer. And I think that's a more typical kind of mindset of females, not always, but it's more likely that you get the like females into the industry that have a more creative slant potentially. And so I felt that, because I was coming from a different perspective. I wasn't, maybe I didn't really feel like an engineer, but in fact, I realized after a couple of years that engineering is all about problem solving and finding solutions. And if you get to that through an analytical means, that's great. But if you get there through like a more creative, big picture thinking way, that's good too. And so there's no one like personality type that makes a good engineer. We need everybody, and we need different personality types and different backgrounds to all work together to like find the best solution. So that took me a while to realize, and I think that's what I mean about making the work environments more like better suited to that and more accepting of those different backgrounds and different ways of approaching problems.
Oh no, I totally agree, understand that, because I'm like that as well, because like I tend to work from top down. And in general, like if you look at the space industry in Australia and the US, they have something called systems thinking and systems engineering, which is kind of top down. In New Zealand, engineering in New Zealand tends to be bottom up. And that's primarily because aerospace is just a new, it's been there. is just not as prevalent like in Australia, and they've had that whole heritage and time to do stuff like that. So you're essentially describing systems engineering and systems thinking. So
yeah, totally. And that's what I didn't realize so much. It took me a while to get there. That I was like, yeah, you need to have all these different people, and people are good at different things, and that's okay. You don't have to be good at everything, and like play to your strengths. Yeah. And I think definitely. I wish I got there sooner.
Oh, that's okay. It's all good. So before we conclude, is there a book or documentary or anything you could recommend to our listeners that you think our audience could learn more about space in New Zealand? Yeah, I know we discussed this before.
I wish there was a documentary on space in New Zealand. Maybe we could make one.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, then I could recommend it. But no, we don't really have too much, right? Yeah, it's a work in progress. But I have a couple of suggestions of other things that aren't documentaries or books. Maybe I'll write the book one day. But there's a couple of good resources. One is, I think, Space is quite a good organization. You've probably heard of it. So they have a really good website where we've got like kind of a list of who's who in the New Zealand space industry, which is great, and they share all sorts of different things happening on in the country. So they're quite a good resource and a good kind of social media account to follow. Other than that, one thing I really liked was I don't know if you know Nicholas Burrows, but I met up with him soon after returning to New Zealand and had some really interesting conversations. And he's published a paper on the difference between the New Zealand and Australian space agencies and the industries and strategies they have. And I found that quite interesting. It was a really good comparison between the two. And so I'd suggest people looking that up. I think it's called Comparing Space Sectors Down Under by Nicholas Burrows, and I found that a really interesting read there. So those are two resources I'd suggest. And other than that, I use Twitter a lot. I don't usually post too much myself, but I find it a really good platform to get industry news, not just from New Zealand, obviously, but worldwide, and connect with other people in the industry and in academia and just doing stuff in the space sector. So, for people who are listening and don't have a Twitter account, you can just create one and follow people, and you don't have to do anything. But it's a great source of information.
As long as you don't get tempted to reply. Right. So if listeners wanted to reach out to you, where can they find you? I assume Twitter, and anywhere else?
You can find me on Twitter if you want. I need more followers. I don't have many. So my Twitter handle is at SJ Blyde. And you can find me on LinkedIn as well. You can just search for Sarah Blyde. If you want to contact me there, you're most welcome to as well. So those are probably the two best ways of getting in touch with me if you want.
All right, cool. Well, thanks, Sarah, for coming on here. I'm sure you have a busy day, so thanks for taking out the time to come on Clean Space.
No worries. Thanks for having me. It was my pleasure.
That was Sarah Blyde, National Point of Contact for New Zealand at the Space Generation Advisory Council. For all the dates for this episode will be on our blog. Until next time, stay safe out there, and thank you for your time. See you later. If you've made it all the way to the end of the show, then a really big thank you. If you're interested in being a patron for the show, you can find Claim Space on Patreon, Anchor, and Audius platforms, where you can contribute as little as $1, as this would help with improving the show. I appreciate the time you've taken to listen to this episode and hope there's some informative content for you. If you'd like to hear more, suggest improvements, or guests, please let me know via the website's feedback form. If you could please share the episode with your friends and colleagues, subscribe, like, rate, and review it on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or any other platform you use, as this would help the algorithms and let people know we are out there. Until next time, see you later.